Hey guys, and welcome to my Invention perks guide for 2018. Now before I start off the video, I just want to mention why you should be using Invention perks to your advantage. Well, first of all, they can boost your skilling and combat experience per hour. Let's take the Hone perk for example, which can increase your chance of successfully gathering an item by 2% per rank. That can then in turn boost your experience per hour. And it can also help you during your bossing, getting you more kills and therefore more GP and experience per hour. Just a little short summary, I guess. Now let's get into the video, shall we? Now just for some newer players, I suppose I should give you guys some basic information about perks and gizmos and how to add them to your weapon or how to create weapon perks. You can make perks by adding components to a gizmo. You have a armor, weapon and tool gizmo, and they are separately created at an Invention workbench as seen on screen. You can add two gizmos to a weapon, to a tool, and to an armor piece as long as it is not a helmet, as you cannot augment helmets and therefore not add gizmos to them. The gizmo dissolver is a useful item you can use to destroy a gizmo from an item so that your item is now clean and you can add new gizmos to it. Sadly, your gizmo will be lost. The same goes for the equipment dissolver, which will destroy your equipment but preserve the gizmo. Now if you have 115 Invention, you can use the equipment separator, which will separate the gizmo and the item and save both without destroying anything. This does require 150 Invention, like I said, but you can boost this up with a super or extreme Invention potion, then discover the blueprint, make this item, and then use it on your weapons at a lower Invention level, which is kind of nice. Now starting off with the combat perks, we have Biting, which has a 2% chance per rank to critically hit opponents. You have Biting 1, 2 and 3, but do keep in mind Biting 3 is extremely expensive as you require noxious components to create it. So I suggest going for Biting 2 unless you have heaps of cash, or alternatively you could get them from the Looting Free perk, which is rare, but you could eventually have enough noxious components to create Biting 3 for yourself. Next up is Precise, probably one of the easiest perks to get, and it increases your minimum damage by 1.5% per rank. You have Precise 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. It's extremely easy and cheap to get Armono components, as you can get them from Armono Warpriest, which you can get from the Armono minions or from the boss Kriara itself, or herself, I don't know. Or alternatively, you could buy Armono items off the GE, which will cost you quite some money, and just make Precise 5 like that if you're too lazy to get some Warpriest. Next up is Enhanced Devoted, and there's no reason to get the normal Devoted armor perk because this one is quite easy to get with the faceted components. What it does is when it is triggered by damage or being hit, it replicates the Devotion ability effect for 3 seconds. You have a 4.5 to 13.5% chance depending on the rank of the perk. Next up is Equilibrium, increasing your minimum hit by 3% and decreasing your maximum hit by 1% per rank. Do not worry about the decrease of your maximum hit or damage, because the average hit increase is actually 1.3 to 4% dependent on the rank, which is good, and it actually increases your DPS or DPM. You are better off getting Equilibrium 2 or 1 with Precise 2 to 4, as it's much more cheap than getting the Equilibrium 3 through the Rumbling components, which you get from the Tier 90 tank armors, Tectonic armor, Drygo weapon, seismic bonds, etc. The cheapest way of getting this perk is by using 5 Precise components in a gizmo, giving you Equilibrium 1 or 2, Precise 1 to 4, and some random other perks if you're unlucky. Next up is Aftershock, being a pretty nice PVM perk. After dealing 50,000 damage, you create an explosion which deals up to 40% of your weapon damage per rank to nearby enemies. The average damage is around 31 to 95% weapon damage, dependent on your rank of the perk. Aftershock 3 is extremely expensive, guys, just so you know, because of the Ilujankan component, which you can only get if you have 2.5k Zaration reputation in the Heart of Gillanor, and then you have to disassemble Anima Core of Zaros, Dragon Rider Lance, or the Zarosian Essence, which is kind of expensive because those items are pricey. Oh, and by the way, the corruption damage from the corruption shot or blast abilities do not add up to the 50,000 damage you need to deal to create the explosion. Next up is Karoming, which is a nice perk if you're AFK monsters that are in a large quantity in a small area, as it has an ability that lets Chain and Ricochet hit one more target per rank. You have Karoming 1, 2 and 3, so the maximum amount of increased targets hit is 3. Now do keep in mind Karoming takes shadow components which are extremely expensive. as you can only get them from Anima Core of Sliske, Shadow Glaives, which are the tier 87 glaives dropped by Gregorovic, and the Staff of Sliske. Also, to even get the blueprint to research and then obtain the shadow components, you require 2.5k Sliskian reputation in the heart of Gilnor, also known as Godward's Dungeon 2. Next up is Absorbative, having a 20% chance to reduce an attack's damage by 5% dependent on rank. You have Absorbative 3, which has a 15% damage decrease. What I suggest you do is get Absorbative 2 and Venom Blood to negate poison damage, which is a good combination. You create this by putting a evasive, healthy and free fungal components in a gizmo. Next up is Crackling, which periodically zaps your combat target for 50% weapon damage per rank. This is 10% in PvP. It can go up to 150% with rank 3, which is extremely good for PvM. Now, Metamorphosis, that ability that increases your magic damage, actually has an effect on Crackling as well, so it deals more damage with that ability activated, just so you know. I highly suggest making it with 4 explosive components and 1 pestiferous component, as you will get Crackling and Venom Blood. Or just use 5 explosive components and get Crackling free and maybe Ultimatimus free. So if you don't know what to do with your perks or how to make a decent setup, I have 2 examples on screen. This is ignoring the fact that you can actually switch up your items during PvM or high-end bossing. This is just if you were to stick with 1 armor and weapon setup. So for the budget setup, the weapon Aftershock free and Equilibrium free. For the body, the Crackling 2 perk and Biting 2 perk. Now for your legs, you want Impatient free and Enhanced Devoted free. Honestly, this is a pretty decent setup and you should just stick with it until you have a lot of money to get the Screw Money setup or just the Endgame setup. So for the weapon, Aftershock 3 and Precise 4 Equilibrium 2. Yes, this is actually better than just having Precise 5 on your weapon. Precise 4 Equilibrium 2 is actually one of the rarest perks in the game and it's going to cost you quite some money to achieve or obtain. So for the body, Crackling free and Biting free, which is a very expensive perk as it requires you to have Noxious components, and for the legs, Impatient free and Enhanced Devoted free again. Like I said before, I did not take into account that you can actually switch up your weapons, equip an offhand and stuff like that for other different perks in certain PvM situations. This is just an example setup for players that don't know what perks to put on their weapons, body or legs. So in terms of skilling perks, the first is the Refined perk. Now it decreases your chance of depleting a resource from a tree or a mining rock by 5%. Now if you have rank 3, that's going to be 15%. I just want to say for mining it does not work on Seren stones, which is too bad. Now you can make this with enhancing components and get rapid at the same time, which is probably your best option. Next up, for fire making or smithing, the Tinker perk is kind of useful, as it has a chance to increase your experience gained by 25%. This chance is 5% or 15% or 10% if it's rank 2, 5 to 15%. Now this does not work with superheating ores, only with normal smithing and normal fire making. You can make it with the fungal components or with the clockwork components as seen on screen. You can get Enhanced Efficient if you're doing it with the clockwork components at the same time while getting Tinker 2 or 3, which is probably your best option. Next up is the Honed perk, probably one of the best perks if you're doing gathering skills because it increases the chance of you successfully gathering an item by 2% per rank. If you have rank 5, you have a 10% chance increase of successfully gathering an item. Now, the best way to make this gizmo, or this perk, is definitely by using sharp components, using 5 in an entire gizmo, as you can also get Furnace 1 or 2, and you get Honed 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. By the way, if you for some reason don't know, you get sharp components from pretty much any weapon, so just disassemble some swords, long swords, battle axes, some halberds, some knives, stuff like that. So next up we have the Furnace perk, which has a 5% chance of consuming a gathered resource for 100% extra experience, which is amazing for any gather skill, and it makes it a bit more AFK sometimes. you have a 5 to 15% chance depending on the rank. I just want to note that this perk does not work on Crystal Cheese or Choking Ivy, Pure Essence, Red Sandstone, and the Jijinko layer if you're cutting the roots. And again, this is probably one of the best perks to use on your skilling tools. Now, you can get Furnace Free with the Dragonfire components, which is a bit easier to get Furnace Free than with the imbued components. But the Dragonfire components, you receive them from Royal Crossbows and Dragonfire Shields, and it's kind of expensive. But with the imbued components, it's easier, but you know, Furnace Free is pretty rare, so you have to do it quite a few times to receive the perk. Next up, we have the Pyromaniac skill, which in my opinion is pretty damn good if you're doing fire making to 120 or even just 99, as it has a chance to burn all logs in your inventory of the same type, and if you're doing fire making, you're probably using the same type of logs anyway, so that's nice, in one go. So this is a 0.1 to 0.5% chance dependent on the rank, as you have Pyromaniac 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is a effective experience increase of 1.3 to 13.4%, which is quite good. Now, of course, it does not use protein logs, as you could have thousands of protein logs in your inventory and burn them instantly, which would be broken. So yeah, that can't be a thing, and you cannot use or consume logs in the familiar with this perk. So if you're using a yak for fire making for some reason, it doesn't work. Next up are these so-called special perks, at least that's what I will call them. The Enhanced Efficient and Efficient perk, reducing your charge during rate of a weapon, tool, or armor piece. This will save you money in the long run, as you'll have to use less divine charges for your items, weapons, or armor. Now, the reduction rate is 6 to 18% dependent on rank for the Efficient perk, and 9 to 27% for the Enhanced version. Now you can get the normal Efficient perk using shifting components, which is expensive, or the healthy components, and at the same time you can get Venom Blood at that point. Now the Efficient version isn't too expensive, as you can get it with Clockwork components, and at the same time get the Tinker perk, which is good for smithing or fire making. You can get Clockwork components from Clockwork items, Gizmo shells, or Dwarf multi-cannon parts. Next up is the Enlighten perk, which is only useful if you want to train your invention up quicker, as it increases the item experience for augmented tools, weapons, and armor. It is a 3 to 9% increase dependent on the rank. Now this means more invention experience in a shorter time period, which is nice. You can also get the Wise perk at the same time if you create this perk using the Severn components or the Pious components. You get Pious components from bones and ashes or gizmo shells. You can get Severn components from crystal equipment or nightmare gauntlets. Next up is the Wise perk we just covered, which increases your bones experience depending on rank from 1 to 3%. You do have a 50k bones experience cap a day though, but that takes millions of experience to achieve. Now you can easily get this perk together with the Enlighten perk, but you can also get it with mobile if you wish to. The crafting recipes are on screen now. Now if you're unsure on what components those are on the Wise and Mobile perk combination, those are a Dexterous component and Flexible parts. The one below is Subtle components and Flexible parts. Next up we have the Mobile perk, which pretty much speaks for itself. It reduces the cooldown of Surge, Barge, Escape, and Bladed Dive by 50%. There's many good ways to craft it, and you really want to look this up on the wiki, but a few examples are on screen using Dexterous components and Flexible components, and a Subtle component. I only see this being useful for clue scrolls or if you want to get somewhere really fast. Other than that, I wouldn't know. I personally don't think I'd use this perk too often. Now the next special perk is Scavenging, which is in my opinion one of the most useful invention perks out there, as it can find components from killing monsters. So you'll get components from killing monsters, and you don't just get common ones, you can actually get rare ones like the Noxious components as well. Now it does give you an increased chance of finding components per rank being 1 to 3%. This perk is perfect for AFK combat training at areas with multiple monsters inside, like the Abyss, Abyssal Demons, Turoffs, and other areas. Now as you may have noticed, I didn't mention every single invention perk, and I still won't, but I'll give some honorable mentions which some people might think are actually good, being the Demon, Dragon and Undead Slayer perk, giving you 7% more damage against those monsters depending on which one you have, the Genocidal perk, giving you 7% more damage or up to 7% more damage depending on how far you are through your Slayer task, the Lucky perk, giving you a 0.5% chance per rank when hit that the damage will be reduced to 1, much like the War Priest does. I mean the Zamorak War Priest. The Venom Blood perk, which negates venom damage, but I highly suggest you get this perk together in a combination with the Crackling or Biting perks, and the Turtling perk, which when using the Barricade ability, the duration and cooldown are reduced by 10% per rank of this perk. Next up, we have a list of the perks you want to be avoiding or you don't want to have in a combination with a good perk. And if you do get that on a gizmo, you just want to destroy that gizmo because that will be better for you in the long run. These aren't all of them, but they are most of them, which are crap. So the Profane perk, which blocks you from drinking prayer potions, the Committed perk, which makes you always scald, with the item equipped of course, the Confused perk, which is very strange. With this perk equipped, you can actually get randomly teleported to a area after gathering a resource. The Courteous perk, with this perk you cannot auto-retaliate, which doesn't matter if you're skilling or you have it on a skilling item. I mean, it's probably even better if you're a skiller, so you can't get any common experience. The Anti-Atheism perk, with this perk you cannot use your Deflect Curses or Protection Prayers. The Blunted perk, with this perk your weapon damage is reduced by 1% per rank. The Undead, Dragon and Demon Bait perks, which reduce your damage against those monsters by 30%. So pretty much you're screwed if you have this perk, because you won't be doing much damage against those creatures. The Inaccurate perk, which reduces your accuracy by 1% per rank. And the Fatiguing perk, which gives you 2% less adrenaline per rank from all attacks. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this perks guide. It did take a lot of effort, so if you did enjoy or found it helpful, please leave a like down below and maybe even consider subscribing. If you're interested in finding out how to get certain parts, I do have an Invention parts guide. And if you're interested in training Invention, I do have a 1 to 99 and 120 Invention guide covering pretty much everything you need to know, or the basics of some things, like the machines for example. Anyways, catch you guys later. Peace.
I'm never gonna stop, yeah. One shot, that's all you got. Take it right now, before you get lost, yeah. One shot, that's all you got. Write your own story, you control the